into the next hour. So away we go. All the folks are being admitted to join us now. And part 2, let's take a deep breath. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CASA Pitzer's gathering. We're so happy to be all together today. It is Friday. It is the last day of the semester for the Claremont colleges. And so a lot of people in this room have worked very hard to make it to this hour in this week of this year. So give yourselves all applause for getting here. And even if you're not in school, we have community partners here. Man, you got to Friday. It is a long year. So we are all here. Thank you all so much for showing up. We have some magnificent presentations today, and we are just so excited to have you all here. As you all know, and for anyone who doesn't, CASA Pitzer has been around for 22 years doing community-based research and activism and organizing with our local social justice community partners. And we are so grateful for the opportunity to work with wonderful organizations and doing some wonderful work together. So I'm really happy that we can present today some of the things we have learned from all of our students and their work in community, and this is their chance to share back some of that. So we're going to kick it right off. Unless I have anything that I should do otherwise, I'm going to just jump right in and say I am introducing our No Justice, No Peace Transformation and Justice Collective student group, and they will tell you what that is, what it's about, the community CASA partners they've been working with, what they've been working on together, and what they've learned. So take it away, No Justice, No Peace group. Thank you so much.
Real quick, Tessa, you might want to remove Susie from translation so that she can speak to the group.
Susie, let's get you out of there. I think it's off. Are you with us now? Okay, I'll work on that while you all, all right, now it should work, Susie. You should.
Yes, you can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, then I'm back.
Okay. So you all can take it away, No Justice, No Peace.
Thank you. I think Keely's just going to share screen.
Sorry, it sounds really bad, but I don't know how to, like, when I click the button, I always go forward and I'm trying to go back.
All good. Do you want me to do it? Okay.
It wouldn't be a party without some technical difficulties, y'all. That's how we roll in Zoom land.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. So we are the No Justice, No Peace, a Transformation and Justice Community Collective. My name is Dahlia, and the other student members are Azucena, Therese, Vanessa, and Keely, and we'll just be presenting today about our program and some of the things we've learned so far. So in terms of a project summary, so the issue of centering wellness and social justice work was raised as a response to requests from CASA partner organizers, a lot of folks who are here today, so thank you for coming, looking for more support in institutionalizing healing and well-being within their own lives and organizations. So in February of 2021, this past year, after a long period of interviews and focus groups and conversations with folks, we launched an 8-month, pretty robust organizational training program to meet those needs, as well as healing practices, to really support our organizers and our partners in the implementation of personal and collective healing.
And thank you for our 4 participating organizations. We have Puerto de Valle, Starting Over, EMON, and IUIC. And our central research question is, what challenges do justice-oriented grassroots nonprofit face, and what resources, tools, and trainings might enhance or actualize the work of healing justice and transformative movement organizing on personal, interpersonal, institutional levels. And if you remember, like last spring, we were all in CASA and we were trying to talk about through HAWA's navigating traumas of injustice, where we're assessing and evaluating burnout. And through that, we wanted to reach to get literature review and supply more resources. And we did evaluations. And from that, now we're doing our organizational development training with our healing practices, and with hopes of that, just evaluating and improving to see what we can bring back to the communities. Next slide. And now Asusana will be talking about the program overview.
Yeah. So the general arc of the sessions really brings us from our heads to our hearts to our hands. So learning about the necessary tools and principles really gets us into our head, and then really reflecting and embodying those tools and principles connects us to our hearts. And then rise in action and using these tools and principles to create tangible change involves our hands. We've had a total of 4 sessions so far of training sessions. The first one was really providing an overview and introduction to the program. The second one by Hala Curry was on trauma and healing informed training for sustainability of frontline workers. The third one was by Scarlett Duarte and Hala Curry on embodied practices for healing and resilience. And last week's was with Kasu Haga on healing and resistance on the nonviolent philosophy for organizers. We've also conducted 4 healing practice workshops. The first one spotlighted embodied listening with Scarlett Duarte. The second one was on somatic experiencing by Hala Curry. And then we did Hayes brought us in as a midwife to our own rebirth, right? Hayes Hawk. And then we just listened to Jacoby Bellard on our social justice work through the heart of practice of forgiveness. Next slide.
And so just as Susie had just told us, so part of the Transformative Injustice Community Collective program, we were able to find, we have a total of 8 training sessions that are focused specifically on the members of our partnered organizations. And then we also have 8 healing workshops which are open to the public. And as Susie mentioned, we have completed 4 of each. These were the days that we had done it, and they're once a month at the beginning, the first and second weeks of the month. And yeah, so we just wanted to share a little bit of the of our, I'm blanking out on the word, our flyer. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little piece of our flyer to have like a little more visual. Next slide.
So after analyzing the transcripts and the Jamboard evaluations, we have seen these themes come up: community building, connection and partnership, vulnerability and cross solidarity, implementation into daily life, heart-centered impact, as well as recommendations for future sessions and healing practice workshops.
Thank you, Teresa. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the themes and what we learned from these themes. And the first one was really as a foundation, community building and connection and partnership. So through these amazing sessions that we've been able to have, we've really seen as a team, as well as participants, create really beautiful and meaningful connections with each other. And although we would wish to have all these sessions in person, sharing food, but even on Zoom, the community was really able to flourish. And I think we all kind of saw folks really commenting on feeling whole and held in the space and being able to form connections with each other in breakout rooms and even through the chat and in the main discussion.
And that theme leads to our next theme, which is vulnerability and cross solidarity. We really have seen participants come into the space willing to be vulnerable, taking the risk of diving into their trauma experiences and showing up for themselves and each other in their healing process. Participants open their hearts and allow themselves to support one another and encourage each other to also be vulnerable by echoing the sentiment or sending messages of encouragement. In that vulnerability, we're able to connect from the heart and witness the deep reflection and healing that is required to change the patterns that keep us from prioritizing and taking care of our well-being and that of the collective. And I'll invite Vanessa to share a little bit about the implementation into our daily lives.
So yeah, as we mentioned, one of the themes that we really want to highlight here is the fact that since the first training sessions and healing practice workshops, we see our participants, and I would even say ourselves, implementing the practices that we are sharing. But I also want to highlight that it's not just practices that we are sharing with the community, but it's also practices that the community is sharing with us and with each other. Numerous times we hear participants say that they will be using and have used the practices from the training sessions and workshops into their daily lives. And I think it's just a very beautiful thing to see that the program that we have set up in place for the community is helping the community and is being used in a way that is very valuable.
So based on feedback from our participants, moving forward, we will connect radical healing and transformation with racial injustice, increase grounding and somatic exercises for emotional regulation, stress, and trauma, as well as adding somatic, mindful, spiritual, and emotional practices that participants can integrate into their daily lives, in addition to the ones that we have all been using currently, giving tools on how to hold these spaces for others, and we will continue to work on the accessibility of these workshops and trainings. And this is the last piece of our flyer, which are the next 4 training sessions and healing workshops. Please feel free to join us in our healing practices. They're on the second Friday of every month from 3 to 4 p.m. These are what our practices will be about. Thank you all so much for attending. It's really nice to see you, and thank you for being in community with us today.
Give some Zoom love to our wonderful student researchers doing such meaningful work. Thank you all so much. That was beautiful. I wish we could spend an hour in each one, but we got a lot of students who are presenting today. So we're going to just like keep going forward on the train. Thank you all. And now we're going to turn our attention to the next presenter. I do want to just insert though, as Jessica put in the chat, if you have questions, comments, anything like that, please put them in the chat. Because we have so many people presenting, we're going to do a bunch of presentations and then have a pause for Q&A and then do a bunch more and then more Q&A at the end. So put them in the chat, we'll track them and bring them back up at the Q&A portion. But right now I'm going to turn the attention over to the illustrious Amanda Gomez. They've been doing really good work for a real long time and so grateful. And well, Amanda will tell you all about it, but I did want to give a shout out, which is the way that the CASA program works is the work that Amanda's been working on now was started 2 years ago with ICIJ and a student named Chris Kabunag, then carried on by another student, Ray Hill-Cristal, and then passing the baton to Amanda. And it's beautiful to see how these long-term relationships we have with organizations blossom between students and how the work just continues on collaboratively. And people don't want to leave. Chris is already a graduate. He's now at CGU. He's still working with us. You know, we have people that just stay on and on to continue the awesome work. So just wanted to make that shout out to our past CASA alumni and then pass the baton over to Amanda.
Yeah, thank you, Tessa. You put that in perfect words. I apologize in advance for dogs barking in the background. That's just how things go. But yeah, so let me go ahead and share my screen for folks. All right. Is that all good for everyone? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. All right. Yeah. So as Tessa had already mentioned, my name is Amanda Gomez, and this semester, as well as this whole year, I've been working with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. And this semester in particular, we set out on creating a book and banner as part of essentially a series of fundraising and protest materials to be used typically when the pandemic comes to a close. But just to preface, last semester, we also had a virtual photography exhibit and similar things to as we're doing now in a virtual sense. As Tessa mentioned, sort of carrying over some of the things that we've done. So for this time, this semester, I actually focused my research into 4 separate themes for the book that we are compiling. And so those themes were home and place, health for all, justice for vendors and workers, and immigration/detention. So for home and place, we approach things typically from a perspective of how COVID-19, the pandemic, living at home, working at home impacted folks' sense of home, folks' sense of place, and sense of belonging in both in their homes, in their communities, and in the Inland Valley region as a whole. So as part of our book and my research in the area, we have compiled and organized photographs from our artists that fit said theme. Then we moved forward with the Health for All theme, which is also a campaign run through the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. And so with a predominant focus on COVID-19, we were able to sort of track the impact just specifically on Latino immigrant populations, on the Inland Valley region, and on the working class in particular. And we also expanded that outreach and the breadth of research to non-COVID related health issues that may potentially impact COVID severity or not. So essentially obesity, malnutrition, various mental health issues, and stress for folks in the region and for our target demographic. So our Health for All campaign through ICIJ, we are hopefully going to be using some of the books and the banners to raise awareness and raise money to go forward in providing the continual work that ICIJ does. Now for our Justice for Vendors work, that continued the work that I did last year in mapping the street vendors in the region and how their experiences were being impacted by COVID-19 and outdoor dining by brick and mortar restaurants. And then finally, immigration and detention, we looked at how COVID-19 was impacting detention and the rates in both detention and private prisons, which are typically operated by the same organizations or the same companies. So with all of that, I'm sorry, having a hard time changing screen. Well, there we go. So the past slide was basically going into that in more depth, but yeah, so just wanted to thank ICIJ for all of the work they've helped us with and the work that I've been able to do with them. I was hoping I could just give everyone a sneak peek at the book that was coming out in the next month or so, if that's okay. Yeah, okay.
Super quick, but yes.
Yes, because my research in and of itself basically goes into each one of those themes and how we frame them in our book. So, here we go. And I'll keep some of the text, not shared, so everybody can actually get the book. But this is some of the work that we've been doing over the past couple of months, and I'm really excited to share it with everybody. I'm really excited to share some of the amazing work that our artists have done. So,
can you make it a tiny bit bigger?
Yeah. And the book will be available as a bilingual, basically one section of it is English, one section is Spanish, but it's the same book put together. But yeah, so thank you everybody.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Yay, much love to you for your beautiful work. We're gonna have a book launch and everything, so keep an ear out for that. All right, I'm going to pass the baton over to Eric so he can introduce the next students. But before I do, I just want to say the CASA program has been so enriched by the teachings of Barbara Junasby and Eric Steinman. So thank you so much to our wonderful professors for their leadership and loving, caring education this semester. So Eric and Barbara, yay. And now, Eric, you can take the baton.
Okay, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Steinman. It's such a pleasure to help the learning happen in CASA. Though the real teachers are the community organizations and the relationships. So it's so great to be able to support that. So it's my pleasure to introduce two students in the CASA program this spring who had a really impactful and inspiring semester of working with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice as well. They are Melanie Andrea, who's a rising senior at Pitzer College, who is also from the city of Pomona and active in the Gente Organizada organization in Pomona. So yo, Melanie, in your own community, and who's majoring in Chicano Latino Studies and Sociology at Pitzer. And Shania Sharma, a rising senior at Claremont McKenna College, majoring in Organizational Studies and Psychology. And I know they've had a really powerful semester working with the ICIJ. So with that, I turn it over and please welcome Melanie and Shania.
Thank you, Eric. All right, I'm gonna share. Oh. How's it looking? Amazing. All right. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Shania, and Melanie and I, like Eric said, worked with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice this semester. We're going to share a little bit about our research and then also some of our takeaways from this experience. But before we begin, Melanie is going to do some acknowledgements.
Yeah, so we first want to acknowledge Professor Eric and Barbara just for supporting us in our research and teaching us new ways of doing research. Also to our classmates who we were able to share a beautiful bond, although being virtual. We also want to thank Araceli and Lisette for allowing us to work virtually with them and being able to learn from them and being engaged with the community in the Inland Empire. And this is dedicated to the people at ICIJ and the Spring 2021 CASA cohort. And then for this specific time, we're going to be doing an interactive activity. So I hope all of y'all can help us with this. We're going to be asking the following questions. Shania will be, and you will have 30 seconds to think about your answer, but do not type it in the chat. Shania is going to be doing a countdown to 3, and whoever feels comfortable sharing, they can share their response in the chat.
Yeah, so basically the intention is to kind of do a quick free write and get us thinking, inspired by Eric and his constant free writes in class. So there's 2 questions, and whichever one speaks to you more and inspires more of an answer, go ahead and pick that one. So the first one is to think of someone that you really trust and then do a quick free write about what made you trust them. Did they do anything when you first got to know them that made you trust them? Or alternatively, think of someone or an organization that you distrust and think about what made you not trust them. Did they lose your trust or did they never have it? So I'm going to do like a 30-second timer, write whatever comes to your mind in the chat. And then at the end of the 30 seconds, we're going to do a countdown. And if you feel comfortable, we're all going to send it in the chat together. But if you don't, that's totally okay too. So the 30 seconds for the free write starts now. All right, that was 30 seconds. So now I'm gonna do like a 3, 2, 1 countdown. And on 1, if you feel comfortable, it doesn't matter what you have, few words, incomplete sentences. It's just to like get us all thinking and sharing. So I'm gonna do 3, 2, 1, and then on 1, you can hit enter if you feel comfortable. All right, 3, 2, 1, go. Ah, I was afraid that no one was gonna share. Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, so the idea was to just get everyone thinking about trust, and then Melanie will explain a bit more about our intention with the activity.
Yeah, so our research project has to do with trust and distrust. If we could go on to the next slide.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
It's okay, thank you. So our research project has to do with building, rebuilding, and maintaining trust between grassroots organizers in the immigrant community in the IE. And the reason we decided to come up with this research project is because we noticed that trust comes up in every meeting. And through the field notes and interviews of an ICIJ member, we found out how much trust is important to the organization in ways that it could help with the organizations, right? So our purpose is to try to find strategies on building trust as an organizer. And we try to think of what complexities there are within trust. And we focus on different areas. So trust between the communities and organizers, and trust between the local government and the community. And those were like our main ideas of this research project. And another thing that we also focused on was trying to make sure that, building trust is something that ICIJ could use in order to interact with the street vending community, which is what we focused on for this project. And we did field notes, interviews, and for our project, we decided to make it a creative project. So instead of a research paper, we did a report with a lot of colors and a lot of visuals because our audience was the community of IE. And we understand that research papers can often be exclusive and can't be as easy to read. So we wanted to make it creative.
Yeah, so we've included some screenshots from the report that we made in this presentation. But we also, if you're interested in seeing the whole thing, we're going to have our emails at the end of the presentation. So you can email us and we can send to you what we have. So we're going to start by quickly introducing ourselves. So I'll go first. I already said my name, but I am from Mumbai, India originally, and that means that I'm an international student in the US, or like immigration likes to call us fondly, a non-resident alien. And I chose to work with ICIJ this semester because as an international student, I feel a huge sense of privilege, but also solidarity with other immigrant communities. And that was a big theme in our research as well.
And my name is Melanie, and I am from Pomona, California. And the reason I decided to work with ICIJ was because I feel like it relates a lot to like my community here in Pomona. But the work that's constantly worked around with ICIJ reminds me of my parents who are both from Mexico. This work reminds me of them, and I wanted to continue that while being in college, while being at Pitzer. So it feeling like home.
Yeah, so like I said, our stories are tied together by shared feelings of fear, uncertainty, and helplessness at the hands of a powerful state. They're also tied by our sense of moral responsibility to exercise our privilege to make social change. This is a little excerpt from our report that we thought we'd include.
And then just a little bit background about the Indian Coalition for Immigrant Justice, ICIJ. They work closely and dedicating to working closely with the immigrant community in the Indian Empire. And their purpose is to build a collective to provide and serve for the immigrant community. And they do that through resources, having workshops that can be very informative. They also fight for immigrants to be treated with dignity, which is the large portion of their efforts. They also focus on local policymaking and making sure that the lives of street vendors are impacted in a good way.
Yeah, so while we worked with ICIJ, they were working mostly with street vendors and home cooks. So we supported them by making a survey for street vendors and then also making a resource booklet.
So for the research booklet that we were able to create, we did it in Spanish and English because we do understand that street vendors might not always understand English, but they understand Spanish. So we wanted to do it bilingual. And we're hoping that maybe in the future we could do it in other languages as well, since we understand that immigrants don't only come from like the Southern, they come from around the world. And for this resource booklet, we focused on trying to get emergency response network, which is a hotline that ICIJ provided for people if the community's ever interactive like with immigration, so they're able to contact them. We also have numbers for legal assistance, and we provided Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador for now. Because as we previously mentioned, we understand that not all immigrants come from Mexico, but also from parts of Central America. And we do understand that there's also immigrants that come from around the world. And we also have a Know Your Rights portion that could be useful for street vendors. And these are our findings that we found within our research project. So we focus on trust and distrust. And for the distrust portion, we found out that there was trust towards immigrants, and this distrust came from local government. And another one was the sources of distrust. So what made the local government distrust immigrants, but not only that, the organizers. We also provided examples of distrust. And for the trust portion, we focus on building trust. So what are ways that the organization can create bonds with and relationships with street vendors. Sustaining trust is having that first interaction. How can they continue building that relationship?
So we started our booklet by like situating ourselves in the current anti-immigrant political climate that we are in. We found that in attending public forums like city council meetings, we found that anti-immigrant sentiment definitely also manifests, unfortunately, in the behavior of IE residents that aren't immigrants. So they have a strong orientation of distrust towards immigrants. A lot of comments that were made were expressed distrust toward not only immigrants, but also ICIJ, calling them interest groups, pushing their agenda. And then there were also comments made that linked and created false narratives that linked immigrants and criminality, like saying that street vendors could be pedophiles and home cook owners could be running meth labs. So we found that there was this broader environment of distrust that our research was taking place in. And then we also looked at sources of distrust towards organizers and distrust specifically during the pandemic. And we found that the major sources of distrust comes from fear of ICE, threats of deportation, surveillance, and then also fear of violence because of the vigilante violence that's been taking place against street vendors in the IE. And of course, distrust during the pandemic. One thing that stood out to us was that now that a lot of public forums were taking place virtually with no screens and just voices, there was a sense of dehumanization taking place that made it harder for those trust relationships to form. And that distrust made community members less willing to accept resources from ICIJ, which is why building trust in this time and amplifying those trust building strategies is really important. So on that note,
So I noticed that we're running out of time. So I'll just mention real quick. The three main things about building trust was being community oriented. So making sure street vendors know that you are part of the community and know who you're reaching out to, but also knowing the demographics. The choice of words is also important. So how do you speak to the street vendor? The way you present yourself is very important. And another one was having a customer mindset when reaching out to vendors. So making sure you show proximity to your location, as an ICIJ member mentioned, which is very important to building trust. And also when approaching a street vendor, not only going to speak with them, but also like helping support their own businesses, right? Buying from them, which is like the most helpful thing you could do for a street vendor is purchasing their items and sustaining trust, making sure how do we make that first interaction very successful and how do we continue helping them, right? Helping them with resources, while also keeping a short interaction, because we do understand that street vendors have to hustle, right, for their money. So keeping it short, but very impactful.
Yeah, so really quick, we mapped the different areas of trust that we looked at onto this model, which is a model of looking at trust as a form of social capital. So those trust relations as really being something that can power social change. And like we kind of said, just in summary, there is sources of trust between immigrants. And of course, it's a huge community asset, the work that ICIJ is doing to build trust. But there is also a climate of distrust and instances of distrust because of the attack that the state is launching on the trust in immigrant communities. All right, so quick takeaways. From CASA, I learned a lot about how powerful research can be, how to run a sustainable movement that focuses on the well-being and healing of the community, and also how to be more resilient, grateful, and empathetic from Melanie.
And for me, the CASA program allowed me to learn about research and do research, which was something that I didn't learn until I came to college. And it was a privilege being able to do research, not only about like the community, but also learning ways to organize. And I'm also extremely thankful for Chanel, who taught me ways of doing research and for doing these beautiful graphic designs with me. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Sorry for going over time. These are our emails. Tessa, you are up next.
Thank you. I was looking to see who was up next, and it's me. So thank you so much to the both of you. That was just beautiful work. Oh my gosh. We all want you to become our own personal graphic designers after that, because that was amazing. Okay, Sonia, where are you, Sonia? Oh, there you are, Sonia. Sonia has been with CASA now. She's another one who couldn't leave. She tried to leave, and then she had to come back and continue the work. So Sonia is going to be presenting. She joins us from Scripps, also from Connecticut. We're really happy to have you, and take it away, Sonia, talking about starting over. We'd love to have you present.
Yeah, thanks so much. Can you all see the screen? Okay. So I'm Sonia. It's nice to meet you all. And this semester I was continuing an internship with Starting Over Inc. in Riverside, All of Us or None. And I was working on continuing my research that I started last semester in the CASA program. And last semester I was really focused on the cost of incarceration in Riverside County in both financial and personal costs to folks. And this semester I expanded on that to take it the step further about how we can start imagining how we change these things and move forward. So this presentation is Reimagining Riverside County, Coalition Building to Close Jails and Shift Funding Away from the Sheriff's Department and into community-based resources. So just to start us off, I wanted to give everyone a kind of common ground to stand on and go over a little bit of what I found out last semester in terms of the cost of jails. So whenever talking about the cost of jails, it's really important to acknowledge that it's much deeper than just financial costs, right? So for people who experience incarceration directly and also their family members and loved ones. There's a lot of other repercussions like mental health, disconnection from the communities that care most about us, trauma, strain on family and close relationships, stigma that follows people for the rest of their lives, and also barriers, other barriers to reentry post-incarceration, including having more trouble accessing jobs and housing. And it's also important to note, important context, that Riverside County just recently built a $376 million jail that increased the net beds, net jail capacity by 1,273 beds, and was also the largest jail ever constructed in Riverside County. And this jail expansion was completely unnecessary. So we can see in the numbers that since 2014, the average daily jail population has been consistently dropping, and that actually in 2020, almost 80% of the jail population was non-sentenced, which is a big deal. And we see that that's not a weird trend. We see that since 2015, this has been the case, right? The non-sentenced population has been increasing and increasing over time. And so this all speaks to the fact that Riverside County does not need to increase its incarceration footprint, but actually needs to be actively decreasing. And so we know what the solutions are, is the good news. Riverside County needs to invest in care, not cages. That means things like closing jails, enacting pretrial reforms, decarcerating by repealing laws that criminalize poverty and mental health crises, investing in re-entry programs, and investing in community resources and alternatives. And so from there, we get onto where I started my research this semester, which is that we know the solutions, right? We've seen them work in other communities across the nation and the world. And we in Riverside already have folks that are actively engaged in this struggle. Riverside All of Us or None and Release Riverside have been actively doing this work and showing up to Board of Supervisor meetings, planning protests, planning actions, doing their best to make these changes happen, right? But we also acknowledge that it's in order to be successful in this movement in Riverside County, it's going to require a really broad and consistent support and base of support from the Riverside community, because we also know that leadership in Riverside County is historically conservative and has invested in this expansion of the jail footprints historically. So in that, we acknowledge that we need a structure to organize folks into, right? Once they're activated, once they are become aware of these issues. And we need structures that also allow for different levels of engagement. So we have, and in ways that center the most directly impacted folks, but also allow for levels of engagement from folks who might not be directly impacted as well. And so this is really where my research has been, thinking about how we can successfully shift funding away from the Sheriff's Department and build enough public support that we can make these changes happen. And the movement work that is required to sustain this really starts with doing research first, so we know where the issues are and what to target, and then understanding how to build movement together. And so what I've been working on is compiling a guide for folks to continually understand budgetary research in Riverside County and continue to be able to update this information and continue educating the public. And also touching base with folks who've done this long-term coalition building and finding out directly from them, and also just by researching successful movements across the nation, what we could do in order to sustain these long-term movements in Riverside County. And so some of the key themes that I pulled out from being able to meet with researchers at a researcher at the Vera Institute of Justice, and also two of the lead organizers from Justice LA, who, if you're not familiar with Justice LA has been super successful in both mobilizing large numbers of folks and moving forward huge wins in LA County in regards to decarceration and moving towards a future of care, not cages. And so from this, one of the main themes of talking to these folks is just to reach out to folks who do work you admire and have had success with their strategies. I was honestly really surprised about how willing and readily people were willing to talk to me. And I learned so much from them as well. And some of the key things in building coalition and also doing this kind of research that I found was the importance of establishing clear values, right? So for us at Riverside, all of us or none, that means centering the voices and decisions of formerly incarcerated and system impacted folks, and staying true to the mission of reducing the footprint of incarceration in reclaiming, reimagining, and shifting resources out of carceral systems and into community-based resources. Another big thing is look for the unexpected, and that means both allies and also in research as well. So one of the big things that I found out in my budgetary research was that the cost of incarceration is much larger than just the line item in the budget, right? There's a lot of things that go to incarceration beyond that, like in our health system and mental health and stuff like that. There's a lot of like hidden costs of incarceration within the budget. And also in terms of building a coalition, it's the truth that the prison industrial complex negatively impacts almost everybody, which also means that there's allies in almost every group. So something that I've started thinking about is where this movement, the prison abolition movement and decarceration movement, intersects with so many other movements, right? And then where to find allies in those groups. And that means in public health, in labor movements, even unions of folks who work in carceral systems. We've seen this in the pandemic. Some of the folks that have been impacted by the health disparities within jails are the folks working in them. And so finding that these parallels where people will also align with the need to close jails. Also the environmental justice movement, the immigrant justice movement, gender justice, racial justice, it just goes on and on. There's intersections everywhere. And then the third key thing that I pulled out was experimenting with positive framing and trying to find a message that resonates with the most people and has broad appeal. And what I found is that people are more likely to listen if you frame in the positive rather than the negative. So while it's true that jail conditions are terrible and inhumane in Riverside County and all over the nation, people tend to be more open to narratives of building rather than just taking structures away. So focusing on this idea of reimagining, challenging people to think of what true public safety looks like, and imagining how we enact these structures and build these structures as community and together is a narrative that happens to generally stick with people more. And so with all this being said, I've also learned coalitions take a lot of time to develop and they're all based on relationship. And so I'm excited to see where this can go moving forward. And yeah, that's a very abbreviated version of all that. But thank you so much. And thank you so much to Avalon and to everyone at Starting Over Inc. and Riverside Officer None who are constantly inspiring and supporting and who I learned so much from. And also from CASA and Tessa. Okay. I don't know how to stop screen sharing. Oh wait, I do.
Okay, and let's say thank you to Sonia for presenting. And I would like to proudly introduce our next presenter, Pitzer student Michael Griggs. Michael interned with Riverside All of Us or None and Starting Over this semester. And I'm really excited for you all to see what he's been working on. So Michael, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Let me just, I'm about to share my screen right now. One second. Can you all hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, hi everyone. My name is Michael Griggs. I'm a senior here at Pitzer College, and I'm a formerly incarcerated non-traditional age student. And this semester, I have the honor and privilege to work with and alongside Starting Over Inc. In a participatory action research project. Starting Over Inc. is a 501c3 organization which provides supportive services to currently and formerly incarcerated people. Its mission is to assist low-income men, women, and children in need of housing by providing transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, and reentry services to effectively foster self-reliance, leadership, and economic development. So, introduction. I'm just going to walk you through my research project here. I would like to give acknowledgements to Barbara Junisby, Tessa Hicks, Eric Steinman, my geese over here, everyone in the CASA program, and then Starting Over Inc. in Riverside, all of us or none. Introduction. The United States, once a leader of the free world, is now a leader in incarceration, with over 2 million people behind bars. As a result of mass incarceration, prison conditions have deteriorated. Lawsuits allege human, civil, constitutional rights violations. This is especially apparent in California, the state with the largest population behind bars. Legislative reforms have shifted the problem facing prisons to county jail. This is abundantly clear in Riverside County, who is now under judicial oversight due to inadequate medical and mental health care. Thus, this paper will apply a critical lens to county jails as we examine the world we want to create the world we want to see. My research question is, how can community help improve the conditions inside county jail? So my settings. I would like to just talk about a quick anecdote. My very first day interning with Starting Over Inc. in Riverside, all of us or none, I was actually invited to a protest, and I'm sorry, I'm getting like a lot of feedback here. During this protest, it was to protest the lack of visitation taking place in county jails due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On my drive over to West Valley Detention Center, I saw a lot of warehouses: Home Depot, Bradshaw Home Furniture, New Balance, TriStar Industries. All these warehouses were logistical warehouses that companies use to distribute their goods. In the middle of all this was West Valley Detention Center, another form of warehousing humans for the central distribution of around the state. I mentioned this anecdote to illustrate a fundamental point. Oh, actually, so the most important part I'm trying to make with this is during when I got to West Valley, when I got there, I was stopped by a police officer, and he threatened to arrest me, and he because as a former incarcerated person, I was not supposed to be on their grounds. And so I mentioned this anecdote to illustrate a fundamental point, that the fact that it was 12 years since my last incarceration, I'm a student attending a prestigious liberal arts college, not on probation or parole, and have had some degree of success. Nothing can remove the stigma associated with a criminal conviction and the lifelong ramifications that it can have on those who possess one. Incarceration is a demeaning process. It strips people from their dignity, separates people from their community, families, and once released, the government offers little assistance. That is why community-based organizations are so important. They provide the services that the government is unable or unwilling to provide. Organizations like Starting Over Inc. and Riverside All of Us Are None act as a support system for formerly and currently incarcerated people. They offer in-reach and like a letter writing campaign, and providing services, requested information to those incarcerated. They offer housing, participatory defense, which is a community organizing model, which family members can attend to help their family members, or people fighting case can attend to get support in fighting their case. This includes like a social bio packet and supportive services. Mainly, Starting Over Inc., their goal of Starting Over Inc. is to catch people, embrace them, support them, and uplift them. Those were the words of Erica Smith when she gave a presentation to my CASA class. So in my research, I went through the history of prisons in the United States, and prisons actually were formed as a more humane prisons were actually formed as a more humane option to the forms of corporal punishment at the time, where mutilation and guillotines were used. So it was started as by the Quakers as a more humane approach, ironically. And this is the first penitentiary in California, in Pennsylvania. It's called Eastern Penitentiary. So mass incarceration, there are a couple of theories of why mass incarceration happened in the United States. Author Laura LaQuant, in his book called Punishing the Poor, attributes mass incarceration to a symptom of a capitalistic driven society, a mechanism to punish the poor. His basic theory is that those who abide by this capitalistic driven society are praised, enriched, and those who are poor and punished and go to prison. Another theorist, Michelle Alexander, attributes incarceration as a new form of slavery. It removes the rights that people in civil rights movement fought to gain, strips people of their humanity, and is profit driven. As a result of mass incarceration, the prison population in the United States has swelled. This is especially apparent in California, as you can see by this graphic here. And as a result of mass incarceration, overcrowding is prevalent in both jails and prisons. So overcrowding has led to a number of litigations around civil and human rights abuses around lack of medical and mental health. In Brown versus Plata, they helped. I'm sorry. Please step in. I don't know if you guys can. I can't hear you guys.
You have about 1 minute left, Michael.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna get down to the ending here. So what I say, my research What I tried to accomplish throughout this literature review is to highlight the injustice and human suffering that has been brought about by the denial of freedom, whether incarceration is a new form of slavery or Jim Crow or a symptom of a capitalistic driven society. One thing is certain, incarceration has been and continues to be a tool of separation. Separation from white, from black, rich from the poor, and the rights from individuals and from families and communities. My position is simple. No radical reform of the criminal justice system can be complete without community involvement. I contend that serious and sustained engagement between the community and corrections would not only improve the quality of life for those held within its confines, but also work to a benefit of the sheriffs that are resilient to change in the communities. So all this boils down into is a new way of thinking of a new way to implement something that already exists in prisons. In prisons, they have something called the Inmate Family Council, and this family council does not exist in the county at the county level, and so using like a critical approach, I think this could be implemented in the county level. I think that's it for me. I'm sorry, this presentation, I had like a lot of feedback here.
No worry, Michaels, that was great. If everybody can just give a big round of applause for Michael or share some love using your reactions. And Barbara, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. That was really great. It's my pleasure. I'm Barbara, Professor Junisfy, and I'm teaching the research methods class portion of the CASA this semester. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mateo Enriquez, who is an intern who interned this semester with the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Coalition. Let's give it up to Mateo.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. And thank you, Shania, for sharing my presentation for me. Jessica, you're on my screen, so can you just give me a 5 when I'm 5 minutes left? Okay. Thank you all for being here. I have this project today in collaboration with the Inland Empire Youth Collective and the CASA program. The name is UndocuQueer, Navigating a Gendered Language in the Intersections of Undocumented and Queer People. Next up, please. So a little bit about me. My name is Mateo. My home country is Panama City, Panama. So I'm also a non-resident alien, just like Shania. I'm a junior at Pitzer College and majoring in organizational studies with a concentration in queer Latinx studies. I'm also identify as queer and gender nonconforming. I have a lot of acknowledgements, but I'm just going to make them quick. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, my grandparents. Thank you, my brothers. Thank you to my friends. Thank you, Tia Loti. And furthermore, I would like to thank the hardworking, inspirational women at the Inland Empire Immigrant Youth Collective, Angel, Naomi, Marlene, and Haida, who have welcomed me into the organizations with open arms, who check in on me every day and have become my drive for working in this internship. And a special thanks to all the undocumented ambassadors and also the CASA program. This research is dedicated to all young queer Latinx people. So introducing the research, through the interning at the IIYC, I'm just gonna say IIYC for now, I was part of the many conversations surrounding the uncertainty of language and what we should use when identifying people who are queer. With Spanish being the most used language amongst undocumented people in the IE, the gendered language holds a lot of challenges for queer and gender nonconforming people. Through this research, I attempt to create a conversation around this language, what possibilities it holds, and what we can do, what we can take into the future. Next up, I will be using humble inquiry. I will not claim to know any place to come from any place of expertise. I will only offer what I have to give. I don't know what the answers are, and we cannot claim to know what the right answers are unless we are in accordance as a community. Therefore, I want to approach this research with an open mind and show the possibilities we have as a community to take authorship and of our freedom and success to show what is true today and what could be true in the future. I begin my final report with this quote. It took many years of vomiting up all the filth that I had been taught about myself and half believed before I was able to walk on this earth as though I had a right to be here. That's James Baldwin. This quote is prominent to me because it's all about unlearning the ways in which our society taught us to follow rules that were never in place, rules that go back to colonial times. For me, I had to learn what it means to be a man and subsequently what it means to be a woman. Through my college career, I've learned a lot about my own gender identity, and that is that no one thing makes up a person's gender. Language plays a huge part in the ways in which we all are affected socially, especially when using Spanish language because it's so gendered. I owe a lot of my growth to California, and in that process, I learned a lot about the area that I was in, transitioning to becoming more proximate to the Inland Empire through my work with IIYC. A little rundown of the demographics of IE. The IE is made up of San Bernardino and Riverside counties. There are nearly 1 million immigrants in the Inland Empire, and 63% and 61% of those populations are not English proficient in San Bernardino and Riverside County subsequently, which goes to show how large the undocumented population is and how language barrier affects a lot of the IE residents. The conversation of is it Latin, Latinx, Latina with an at, or Latine came from the beginning of working with IIYC with my mentors, Marlene and Naomi. The reason it hit me hard was because I didn't know the answer, and in that way, I hope my research answers that question and concern. 2 minutes? I know. Okay, I had a lot to say about the IOIC. Thank you guys, love you guys. They are a grassroots organization founded in 2010, located in Empire, and this research would not be anything without them. Next up, so sorry. Navigating through the colonial languages. Going back to the conversation, my friend and co-researcher, Viviana, gave me this word called docta ignorantia, which is a Latin word that means learned ignorance or designation, or designating the limitations of human knowledge, that like human knowledge and human language really does limit us in many ways. The reason I believe it limits us is because we are too comfortable as humans in the ways we categorize each other. Next up. With this, I want to introduce one of the other prominent quotes in my research: queer as in escaping definition, queer like some sort of fluidity and limitlessness all at once, queer like a freedom too strange to be conquered, queer like a fearlessness to imagine what love can look like and to pursue it. Linda Tuhani Smith. Queerness in this definition holds the answer to our problems when it comes to creating powerful, identifying words that do not limit us, but free us from social rule, to imagine what life can look like and to pursue it. Even just a few years ago, queer was an insult, but LGBTQ community adopted it and redefined it to create a sense of pride in our collective. That's an example for how our language can change. So going into like the possibilities, queer people have been alive and thriving in our society for centuries, and it's very much the same problem. LGBTQ and immigrant rights are not parallel movements, but rather intersecting ones in the fight for social justice, Jesus Cisneros. There's a stigma around it, a stigma around queerness in the Latinx community, and a lot of backlash. For example, in English, we have gender neutral pronouns. There could be a group of people with all different genders and they would be called they. In Spanish, there is no gender neutral pronouns. So if there was a room of 99 women, they would all be called ellas. But if one man walks in the room, it would change to ellos. And I personally don't believe in catering to men, so that's not going to fly. But more recently, the term ellas with an E has been used as a gender neutral pronoun in Spanish, changing any word from cansada to cansade. I love this solution, but changing the letter to X, like Latin X, can be hard to say sometimes, but I have my own reservations with using ellas, but because it's hard to explain to people and people themselves are not educated on these terms. It is currently reserved for mostly academics and younger people. Next up. And so I come to the part where if the real Academia Española, they are like the gods of language in Spanish, and they don't, according to them, Latinx and Latina and Latina are not Spanish, but fun fact, selfie is to them. So there's many ways in which that Latinx or Latina could jump into this conversation. And I would like to finish with a promise for the future and hopes for everyone here and anyone who is part of this conversation to keep it going. Like the community members at IOI said, we deserve more and still we are here and we're not going anywhere. So these conversations have to be had in order to transition from using Latino to Latinx. Lastly, I would like to thank all the giants whose shoulders I stand on, but mostly my community, because this research would not be anywhere without you guys. Thank you all.
Yay, thank you, Mateo. So we have time for a question and answer period for all of those who have gone, all the giants who just presented this afternoon, sorry. So maybe we'll just think about questions. And as we think about questions, would you all like to do a little stretching just real quick? So you might want to inhale and lift up and imagine a lot of space between your vertebrae and imagine light shining through your bodies, maybe lightness. And then exhale, arms down. How about inhale one more time? Up. And maybe lean to the right and stretch out to that corner. Imagine yourself really long. Come back up to the center. Stretch to the other side. Imagine like you're a really long arrow pointing to the left corner in the top of the room. Exhale, arms down. How about some shoulder rolls? Shake, 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 shake your hands. How about look down once and just let lots of space on the back of your neck. We're like always hunched over in front of the laptop. Okay, all right, without further ado, you all, questions, comments? Oh, we have a question from Griselda. I just hopped on again. Mateo, can you confirm if we're moving forward with using the word Latina? Is that what it was? Please confirm.
I sadly cannot confirm because I am not Real Academia de Español, but I hope that there is a conversation about that, whether we change it from Latinx or Latin, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, both of those have the solution of including gender nonconforming and queer people into the conversation of Latinx or Latina. So my whole presentation is that you can use either of those, but I hope that in the future that our language does change in a way where all the words have a gender neutral situation, not just two genders. And thank you for your question.
All right, Avalon, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I'm on my phone, so I didn't type it in. Thank you, everybody, for the presentations. These are amazing. So proud to have worked with the Starting Over interns. My question, I guess, is I'm thinking about the future and a liberatory future. And I guess this is a question for everybody who presented. In 10, 20 years, like, what does liberation look like to you, especially in relation to your project and what you were working on? Like, what changes do you want to see? What does the world that you want to live in look like, especially related to the projects that you worked on?
I can start. I guess, like, really short and simple. That question like almost really made me emotional, because we're in such a time of like just having an orientation to distrust, and that weighs on us in our lives so much. So in 10, 20 years, I hope that our orientation is to trust each other. Yeah, that's all I say.
I can go. For me, it's a world of care, not cages, if that makes sense. And I think really what I imagine is communities that are strong enough to hold each other when harm is caused, rather than pushing each other away. And communities where everyone can feel safe, and have all their basic needs met and feel loved by someone. Yeah.
I hope that in 5 to 10 years from now, our language does change in a way where we use Latinx and Latina and introduce a gender neutral pronoun in Spanish. But I also hope that none of those are the answer. I hope that we find a different answer that all of us are more comfortable with.
I counted to 20. Okay, as I always say in every class read. Any other questions or comments? Yes, powerful words shared. I love the imagining and the envisioning. Such a great question. We should do more of that. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we can move on to the next group. Great point. Okay, so who is next?
I'm gonna do the introduction. Oh, this is so great. This is such a learning community. I really am appreciating all this. So gonna jump right in here. So our next speaker will be Tyler Benedict, who is an American Studies major who's graduating in 1 week and 1 day from Scripps College. So yeah, Tyler, graduating. And who worked with the Warehouse Workers Resource Center this past semester. And one thing that kind of stood out was that even though this was a very challenging semester for everyone, for students, for community organizations, that, you know, Tyler reported that she clearly found a sense of community there, which speaks both about Tyler and to the WWRC. So with that, I hand it over to Tyler. So please welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Also, I wish I was graduating in a week. I have one more semester left.
Oh, I thought, you're a senior and I thought you were graduating.
I'm a first semester senior. So.
Oh man, well, there you go. Thanks.
Give me a second to share my screen here. And luckily I can tell if it works because everyone's face turns orange. So I can see that it's working. Okay. So like Eric said, my name's Tyler Benedict. I am a first semester senior at Scripps. And I'm honored to be presenting alongside all of the amazing research I've already heard and with my geese from our CASA crew. So, okay, so I interned at the Warehouse Workers Resource Center this semester, also known as WWRC. They were founded in 2011 and they're dedicated to improving the working conditions for warehouse workers in the Inland Empire and in Southern California at large. The three main tenets of this nonprofit are education, advocacy, and action. And they assist with issues of health and safety like wage theft and injury compensation. But of course, more recently, their focus has been on issues related to COVID-19 and workplace rights. So my research question or questions this semester were one of the first things that Vero, our coordinator, introduced to us is that the Latinx community in terms of coronavirus cases are at 3 times that of white cases. So I'll go to the next slide. I have this chart a little bigger here. So the Black and Latinx communities are becoming infected with coronavirus cases at rates 3 times that of our white populations. And at the same time, with the COVID vaccine rollout coming out, I wanted to see what the vaccine rates were like. And it's kind of small, but down here are the Black and Hispanic or Latinx numbers. And they are significantly lower than white and Asian communities. So my research question was, why is Latinx community overrepresented in infection rates yet underrepresented in vaccination rates? And what are some of the main obstacles or concerns to these communities in getting vaccinated? What also is the historical relevance to explain the gap in infection and vaccination rates? And how does WWRC fit in? Their Health Promotores program work to remedy the inequalities that have become visible during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Viviana, who was my fellow intern this semester, will present a little more about that program in the next presentation. And so my research methods this semester was community-based participatory research. This is grounded in knowledge from Tessa and her work partnering with youth organizers to prevent violence. I took field notes during our meetings and during our field work, which unfortunately was only 2 times that we were allowed to go out into the field, but it was such an impactful experience. So yeah, I analyzed my notes and then coded them into main themes and separated these themes into pertinent data and experiential data. So the pertinent data that related directly to my research questions, I coded into the themes marginalization, power, and COVID-19. And these topics came up a lot in my notes. And for my experiential data, this captures more of my experience at WWRC in the virtual space that we shared. But some of the themes that came up were education, community, Spanish, language, and resilience and healing. And one of the guiding mantras in my work this semester is this quote from Michelle Tellez during her lecture with us this semester. She spoke to the necessity of fusing horizons between the grassroots and academia. And that is what I sought to do this semester in order to support WWRC's Health Promotors program and complete my research. And I just wanted to include quickly some of the limits of my engagement. Of course, there was a virtual setting. Of course, there is my positionality as outside of the warehouse workers warehouse workers community. But additionally, I am not fluent in Spanish, and that became a problem a few times throughout the semester. But Viviana, my fellow intern, like I said, was really helpful with this. When we were out in the field and people were speaking in Spanish, she took my notebook and wrote everything down in English, which was awesome and really helped me out. And also for our community meetings, oftentimes there was an interpreter on the meeting. So I don't know if anyone has ever seen this. It was really cool. You can turn interpretation on Zoom and the Spanish will flip into English. So yeah, that was some of the ways that I overcame some of those limits of engagement. So for my literature review, the title was Government Distrust and its Effects on Inoculation Rates for COVID-19 in the Inland Empire. So what I found in my research of other people's literature is that some of the obstacles to getting the vaccine, specifically for the Latinx community, is that many people are scared of deportation and scared of sharing information. And this is because of a history of policies like public charge rules that make people scared of sharing their own information because they're scared of deportation. There's also a number of misinformation and myths going around about the long-term effects of the vaccine. This is not something specific to the Latinx community, but something to be considered. A history of a lack of access to healthcare definitely plays a big part. The language barrier, and for most cases, in order to make an appointment for the vaccine, you need a steady address and internet access. So that also is a main obstacle for some people in the Inland Empire. There's also historical reasons that I uncovered in my research. There are a series of unethical experiments done by the US medical or healthcare industry that leads to distrust in the healthcare system. There's the Tuskegee experiments and the Guatemalan jail experiments, which both involved, exposing people of color to STDs. And the Puerto Rican birth control experiments were, new birth controls being tested on Puerto Rican women. And then more recently, the ICE detention centers for sterilization stories. So what I look to is skepticism around the vaccine healthy or corrosive, healthy skepticism or corrosive cynicism. And I argue that it's absolutely reasonable and rational to be skeptical of the vaccine. And at the same time, it does have corrosive effects on government productivity. And, we're looking to build toward herd immunity. So that definitely is an obstacle to that. And I found in my research that there is a gap in literature around this issue, specifically how it intersects with the pandemic and with different communities of workers, which is why I came to this research and wanted to build on that gap. And then to conclude, I'll give you guys a quote from my literature review, which I think really kind of encapsulates what I want to look to moving forward. And that is that the harsh rhetoric that circulated during the Trump administration cannot be understated. It has lasting effects on the outlook of Latinx communities in the US, as I argued in my literature review. So moving forward, we must consider how we can remedy the effects of this administration and look after our most vulnerable communities in the midst of a global pandemic. Yeah, and that was my research for this semester.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Can everybody give Tyler a big round of applause? And the next presenter is Viviana Plancarte, and she is a Pomona student who also worked with WWRC. And I would just like to say that Tyler and Viviana they were great working with WWRC. And what I liked about both of their presentations is Tyler kind of gave a macro, and now Viviana will give you the micro. So Viviana, take it away.
I'll just share my screen. Y'all can see my screen, right? Yes? No? Okay. Okay, like Jessica just said, I'm Viviana, and I had the pleasure of also interning at WWRC and conducting research which explored the experiences of WWRC promotores de salud, or community health workers. So as Tyler mentioned, WWRC is dedicated to improving the working conditions of warehouse workers in the Inland Empire through education, advocacy, and action. And a key program which they've implemented is the Escuelita program, which educates workers on their legal rights and workplace safety. And it was a principal component of our engagement as interns. The one main challenge I gained a lot of knowledge about was the health risks that warehouse workers face because of the pandemic. So when I conducted outreach in the field, workers were grateful to receive masks and vaccine information because they were only supplied with 1 mask a day. And the maps of total COVID-19 cases backs up these risks with the statistics. So the rate of total confirmed COVID-19 cases in San Bernardino County is 13%, and in Riverside County, it's 12%, which continues to exceed the state's rate of 9%. And additionally, like Tyler mentioned, Latinx populations and those employed in essential businesses are disproportionately affected by the virus. And for me, these numbers really hit home because the Black county at the bottom of the screen is my home county. So I did have an interest in addressing these health disparities like those in my own community. And that's why I became engaged with the COVID Workplace Outreach Project called CWAP. And CWAP is a public education campaign to inform workers and employers about the ways to decrease the spread of COVID-19 in the workplace. And it called on WWRC to employ community members to conduct COVID-19 outreach to workers.
Viviana, just really quick, your notes are in front of your presentation.
Oh, that's so, why didn't you let me know sooner? That's so funny. Okay, let me reshare. I got like 7 messages. Sorry, I actually ignored you guys. Shout out to Jessica for helping me shorten these notes so it's 5 minutes, now 5.5 minutes. Okay, we were at CWAP. And it sparked an interest in the organization to showcase how the promotor role can utilize the assets of community members to reduce health disparities. And with their interest in mind, I decided to explore the experiences of promotores as they conduct outreach with a series of interrelated questions, which are listed here. And so in accordance with the rest of the class, I used community-based participatory action research, and it allowed me to work alongside the organization to create a project with actionable results. So I conducted 3 15 to 20-minute interviews with a young adult Latina, a young adult Latino, and an older adult Latina woman. And through these interviews, I identified the promotores' motivation for engaging in their work, their outreach strategies, positive aspects which they learned, and
challenges and suggestions that they have to improve their outreach. And some questions that I asked in the interview were, what challenges have you encountered during outreach, and why were you interested in working with WWRC? And I also collected field notes similar to Tyler, and this was guided by Emerson et al. I took field notes at weekly staff meetings, intern check-ins, Escuelita meetings, COVID-19 health fair that they hosted, and in-person outreach. And in these field notes, I included information on the settings, the information that was shared, and a personal reflection. So these are just some of my field notes with my messy handwriting, but you can see like I included those details. So my analysis was guided by Emerson's chapter, Processing Field Notes and Coding Memos. And I used focused coding to target these 5 categories of motivation, strategies, positive outcomes, challenges, and suggestions, some of which have subcategories, which I'll get into later. So to get into the results, overall, the promotores were motivated by their interest in serving as a resource to the under-resourced populations and helping their communities. And I borrowed the term double militancy from work from the Chicanas during the Chicano movement. It was used in the book Chicano Power. And they were engaged in double militancy by promoting civil and political rights for the Chicano movement while also advocating for gender equality. And I kind of saw this in the promotores because they had double motivations. And the first was to carry out their role for the state and protect workers from COVID-19 by sharing the vaccine information. But they also had this other motivation, which was to protect workers from general workplace violations. So some positive outcomes of the promotores were gaining critical work experience. Some of them were really young, they were 19. And so it just allowed them to get that critical work experience for their futures. And they also learned a lot of new information. Promotores also used a variety of strategies for their outreach, including breaking the ice. So they introduced themselves and they spoke in Spanish rather than English to make the workers feel comfortable. And yeah, those are 2 strategies. Some challenges that they faced by promotores were technological challenges, difficulty reading body language and building trust when approaching workers, and also misorganization and lack of Spanish language outreach materials. Some suggestions that they provided were to reiterate trainings and to organize materials before the outreach. And so in conclusion, this project helps WWRC to better understand the needs of the promotores as they conduct outreach and address those needs as they come up. The next steps for WWRC, which I see fit, would be to address those suggestions, continue to investigate the challenges, and showcase the benefits that promotores have gained in order to increase governmental support and also financial support for their role. So lastly, I want to say thank you to the WWRC staff, which took me under their wing. Thank you to the promotores for sharing their stories. Thank you to the CASA flock, Eric, Barbara, Jessica, Tessa, my peers for their feedback, the CASA alumni, which we've learned so much from, and other contributors, and for my friends and family for watching me give this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Viviana. So much appreciation in this group. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next 2 speakers who both worked as interns with the arts area this semester, and they're going to present kind of in tandem.
Excuse me, Eric. Sorry, we're skipping.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I read?
Oh, yes, you jumped ahead of me. You took my spot. You took my glory, Eric.
Okay.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Shaya, who is our sophomore. I think Shaya and Sophie are the only sophomores among our group, and Shaya did an amazing job. So Shaya, you ready to amaze us? We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. So okay, let me share my screen. Also, I'm in my brother's room. You see all this like sports decor? Yeah. Anyways, okay. Sorry. Okay, let me share my screen. So this presentation right here is my all my data, but I'm just going to talk through everything that I did this semester. So, oh wait. Wait a second, let me make sure. This is, can you see? Can you see this too? These notes? Okay, these are my notes, and this is what I'm about to talk through. So I don't know how to make it so that.
When you were sharing before, we couldn't see your notes.
Yeah, we couldn't see notes.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Okay, so hi again. My name is Shaya, and this semester I worked with Iman, the Youth Mentoring Action Network. They're a nonprofit organization whose work is centered around helping the Black youth of the Inland Empire. They've worked to uplift Black students with a more inclusive form of mentoring called critical mentoring, and with their values, they have created programs, trained mentors, and worked hard to address the day-to-day struggles that their students face, given their positionality. As an intern during COVID-19, I was asked to take on the task of phone banking, and as this was the most effective form of outreach given the circumstances. During my experience, I reached out to parents and caregivers of students from 6 different schools in the San Bernardino Unified School District to notify them about Iman services. So these schools right here, these are the schools that I reached out to, the schools listed right here. Through my phone banking experience, I realized that most of the responses I received from parents centered around confusion, and I began to understand that based on the responses to my calls, these parents believed that I was in a position of power, a position to explain to them the ins and outs of the program and why the student is being called about the program. They were first hearing about the program from me, and I questioned how they were first hearing about the program from me if Iman and the school district were in communication. This was when I realized that at some point in time, crucial information had started to slip through the cracks, and it was not reaching the parents or the students, which is why they were first hearing it from me. I couldn't always answer the parents' questions and concerns in depth. I could only point them in the direction where the answers were. I even changed the phone banking script several times to try and ensure that each call would lead to less confusion, and so that I could get more of the parents' emails so that Iman could send them more information. After each call, all I could do was hope that the information would reach the parents and that I somehow helped them a bit with their confusion. I had many predictions for the outcome of my phone banking experience, for the lack of responses, and for the responses that I did receive. Some of the confusion may have been centered around the parents not knowing my area code, lack of communication, and not expecting to receive this type of call, and more, but this all stems from the pandemic. The pandemic has created a dynamic where there are struggles around communication, as there are only a few ways to reach people, and this makes it so that information gets lost more easily. My question and the main themes of this research project, the answers to my question and most of my data are centered around my experiences with phone banking and the issues that the pandemic has caused for the organization, students, and parents. Although one of my main themes center around how the pandemic has affected the organization, parents, and students, I also talk about some of the ways in which Iman can move and grow from the pandemic and provide support to their students once they get back to school, although they have already begun this process. I decided to focus not only on what Iman can do for their students, but on what they can learn from partnerships that other youth organizations have had with school districts so that they can learn how to best move forward once school is back in session. To sum things up, through my research, I state the unfortunate situation that millions have been faced with and raise the question, how can Iman persist through and grow from this unfortunate reality that has dawned upon them? So some of my data shows, I'll go through some of these slides. I have a bunch of, it's not in present mode, because I just have so many slides and so much data, and I want to show you guys all of it, but there are other people I have to present. So I'll just go through this quickly. So during my research, I contacted parents with students from the following public schools, and these are the schools listed. I have Iman's website here. And so here, this chart displays the response rates across each of the schools. I did 438 calls, and this chart shows the amount of parents who answered my calls from each school, and the amount of parents who didn't answer, and the amount of parents who had no service. So this is broken up from each of the schools, and this is the same chart, but it's in a different format. ISHS had the highest number of answered calls and calls that were not answered. This is possible because they had more students than that of some of the other schools. SBHS had the same amount of students on the list, but has less parents who'd answer and more who didn't, and more parents with no service as well. Overall, these charts display that it was more likely that the main outcome of the call would be no answer / didn't answer over an answered call. It was even less likely for parents to have no service, but that happens sometimes as well. And this is another chart that I did that is reflective of the parents who responded and gave me an email. So this chart is representative of the number of parents from each school in which, after they answered my call, I also received an email from them. So out of the 147 answered calls, 97 gave me an email. And this is the same chart, but in a different format. So yeah, I received 97 emails between all the schools combined. This means that out of the percentage of parents who answered, 22.1% of these parents gave me an email. As presented in both of these charts, both Cajon and SVHS has the highest number for emails received from parents, and SGHS has the lowest number. And this will be the last one I show because I know that other people have to present, but I've got all this stuff, even notes from parents talking and their responses to me and confusion and everything. But yeah, these two charts are similar to that of the first, but I wanted to display the data in its entirety rather than breaking it down from school to school. These charts display the percentages as well as the number of charts in which I did or did not receive an answer to, as well as the calls where there was no service. So on the right, this is like all the calls that I did. The number of calls versus the percentage of calls out of 438 calls. So 140 calls, 147 calls answered, 245 calls that were not answered, and 46 calls that had no service. And this was 33.5%, 55.9%, and 10.5%. Yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of like saying it all, even though you can see it, but yeah, and I can like really quickly show you some of my notes, but yeah, these are notes that I took while doing phone banking. So I do like little ticks like answer, didn't answer, etc. Yeah, it's a lot, but yeah, I'll leave at one of these if I can continue. But yeah, so yeah, through this data, we can see that the pandemic or just wait, am I saying this right? Yeah, through this data, we can see that the pandemic has had extreme effects, not through this data, but just through how we've been living life in general, not just this data, but we can see that the pandemic has had extreme effects on the natural functions of the world. From school systems to organizations, work, and the daily lives of people across the world, the pandemic has changed everyone, and we have had to adapt to these changes for better or for worse. My research displays struggle, lack of engagement, and a disconnect between not only me as an intern and parents, but also between parents, students, the school, and the organization, as I previously stated. Despite these unfortunate results, they are honest and telling of the times we are living in. On the contrary, they are also reflective of the work that Iman has done, the work that they will do, as well as the dedication that they have to their students. When I interviewed someone from the organization, they talked about the importance of providing resources to the people who need it the most, especially during this time, even if engagement levels are low. The idea and the concept of not stopping and pushing forward and working harder than ever during such a devastating time is very reflective of Iman's dedication. This persistence as well as dedication will help students with their transition from online school to going back to school in person. Iman exudes strength and will persist through this time, bringing their students with them. They have taught me the importance of community and youth-centered nonprofit organizations, integrating youth voice, understanding generational trauma, and tackling systemic issues in order to help youth take a step towards their full potential. And throughout this experience, I've also learned how flexible research can be, as each student in the CASA program has conducted research in a pandemic over Zoom. So this is only a small bit of what I have to share about my research project and my experience interning with Iman. But I want to thank everybody who has helped me get through this. Barbara, Eric, my classmates, Jessica, and Iman, and everybody. Without them, I would not have been able to get through this. So thank you to everybody. And yeah, that's all I have. So yeah.
Okay. Wow. Thank you, Shai. It's so great to see the diversity of types of research people did and the resilience that everyone displayed in figuring out how to do what they could do. So yeah, it's all amazing. So now I believe I will finish my introduction of Sophie and Daisy. All right. Sophie Ahrens is a rising junior at Pitzer. And Daisy, Daisy, I'm pretty darn sure is actually graduating tomorrow from Pitzer College. So congratulations, Daisy. And they both worked with the arts area. I now turn it over to you. Please welcome them.
Okay, I'll share my screen. I gotta present. Good? Okay. So hi, thank you for all the previous presentations. So my name is Sophie Ahrens, and this semester I had the opportunity to be an intern with the arts area. And so a brief introduction about the arts area.
The Arts Area is a nonprofit organization that provides professional development, civic advocacy, research support, and fiscal sponsorships for equitable access and representation in the creative industries of the inland region of Southern California, with the goal of making art work for everyone. So my research this semester was specifically in the education committee, in which I tried to further my understanding of arts education in the IE and what steps to further create a thriving and equitable art world. Okay, so to start off, this is the current state of arts education in California. Blue indicates more enrollment, while orange indicates less. And so my mouse, you can see San Bernardino County, which has 37% of middle school and high school students enrolled in the arts, while California's average is 40. It's also important to note that students who come from low-income families are also less likely to enroll in the arts in the state of California. We can see that 43 enrollment in the arts in low poverty, while 37% enrollment in the arts in high poverty category. Okay, so this shows that when addressing arts education, one is also addressing inequities between lower income and higher income students receiving an arts education. Okay, and then more specifically with San Bernardino County, the music enrollment is 13.4%, visual arts is 20.3%, theater is 5.7%, dance is 4.1%, and other, which is usually graphic design or media studies classes, are 9.1%. And thank you for previous art area interns, Ari and Ariana, for these graphs about the specific districts and arts enrollment. This is the California enrollment average and then also the specific districts. Okay. This is also some information about why arts education is important, but I'll move on. Okay, so my research goal was to contact teachers and administrators and conduct interviews to further understand arts education in the IE. With this, I present my findings to the arts area so the organization could understand the specific strengths and needs of individual schools. I was able to compile a long list of contact information of each school through online research. I then sent many emails to each school in hopes of contacting educators who are interested in supporting the arts, in which then I was able to set up 4 interviews. I interviewed a vice principal at a high school head of the arts department / teacher, a high school visual arts teacher, and a junior high visual arts teacher. But before getting into my findings, I would like to discuss my literature review. And so I based my literature review on the history of arts education and funding. I first wrote about the inequities in the art world. For example, how the No Child Left Behind Act made arts education the last priority for funding, how schools from wealthier districts receive private fundings, making evident there's a different access to arts based on socioeconomic status, and the negative effects of teaching children only white European male artists. I then discussed how nation and statewide funding has been misused. Then finally, I talked about the benefits of arts education and community organizing, such as creating students' abilities to create art about and for their communities, and more engagement in museums / art installations, leading to better art advocacy. Okay, so these are my findings. During my interviews, 3 themes arose: accessibility to arts education, cross-curriculum, and arts education beyond schools. To start off, I'll talk about accessibility to arts education. 3 out of the 4 of my interviewees, schools offered all 4 art classes. This shows that access to the arts fluctuates between each school. And the schools that are lacking all 4 arts was a junior high school from a different district. This shows that either the high schools can be prioritized or different districts receive different funding budgets. Scheduling was an issue at one high school because the interviewee said that some students ask for arts all 4 years, but do not receive arts because of they're either behind in math or English. While another teacher mentioned how their school scheduled PE classes over the summer so students are able to take an art class. Finally, 2 educators mentioned that they received students with no prior arts education. This shows arts education needs to be addressed at an elementary school level, and a stronger line of communication between different school levels needs to be built. Okay, and then moving on. Okay, cross-curriculum. Okay, so cross-curriculum was mentioned among all interviewees and the benefits of integrating art classes into core curriculum with cognitive benefits, critical thinking, creativity, and abstract thinking. However, cross-curriculum was uncommon, and if happening, it was happening on a personal level and not mandated through the school or district. 2 arts teachers also expressed frustration with core curriculum teachers who deemed their classes as less important than theirs. My last findings was a theme about arts education beyond school and the importance of community building. One educator mentioned how career linking and career linking with local community artists can lead to internships and envisioning what a career in the arts can look like. Interviewees also mentioned the one of local artists coming to speak to students so students can connect with local art community and see themselves taking part in the art world. Okay, so moving forward, my findings through interviews, literature reviews, and time at the arts area has shown me the challenges the art world currently faces, but also the strengths that have emerged through community organizing. So in the future, setting up career and art workshops would benefit young artists in schools because students can start envisioning themselves in the art world, advocating for the arts by either providing toolkits or financial support, which stress the importance of arts education, and finally creating strong relationships with community organizing like the arts area and schools will lead to a more equitable art world because students' voices will be further uplifted and represented. Okay, thank you all for listening. And I'm gonna pass on to Daisy.
Amazing, amazing work, Sophie. Love to see it. So I'm going to make this short, sweet, and to the point. I'm presenting on inland arts and examination of potential growth of the economic and educational infrastructures for the inland arts or inland empire's artistic community. So first, I obviously want to say my acknowledgements to our awesome class. Barbara and Jessica aren't pictured, but obviously huge impacts on us. This has been amazing. I called you all my peer professors in my acknowledgements of my paper, and that's exactly how I feel about everyone in this class. Every single moment on Zoom was a learning opportunity, and it was like one that I wanted to do. And I was like, why the heck am I looking forward to 9 in the morning, 3-hour Zoom calls? But that's exactly what you guys managed to accomplish. So hey, that's great in and of itself. So why arts? Let's go to the next slide and see. So I just was intrigued about sort of like, I worked with the arts area with Sophie as well this semester, and I was just like interested in how art could sort of intersect with community organizing and growth. So basically this is a quote that I found from ACTA, which is the American Council for Traditional Arts, and they find that when you make art together, you create a group consciousness grounded in the local and the particular that also encompasses the public and private spheres. They expand the temporality of the present by connecting it to the past. They expand the sphere of sociality by going beyond the household and the family. They broaden the sphere of politics by airing issues of common concern through art. They allow opportunities for the silence to sing, shout, and speak, for the invisible to become visible, the inaudible to be heard, and the intangible to become tangible. So I think that's a beautiful articulation of how art is seen, how art is quite literally a community asset. And then my question that emerged from this idea of art as a community asset is, why is this not funded in the Inland Empire, despite seeing such prolific examples of like zines being created in Pomona and things like that? And then my follow-up was figuring out how the arts area could build an infrastructure for artistic community organizing in the Inland Empire. So the next slide is a cute little brochure inspired by Shania and Melanie's presentation, because that was so visual learning, amazing, loved it. But basically, I just want to go really quickly into the IE's creative economy and talking about how of the 1,300 California Arts Council grants in 2018, only 24 were given to arts in the IE, and also that even though that in LA and Orange County, they represent 51% of the Inland Empire's state's creative economy, whereas only 3% of folks in the Inland Empire represent that share of the creative economy. So clearly there's a lack of infrastructure for arts. Additionally, this plays exactly into what Sophie was presenting about, because through my interviews and different analyses of like community assets and different studies that have been done on Inland Empire arts, they find more often than not that educational spaces are where this culture has to come from, because we're not funding museums, we're not funding these other initiatives. So then I created a survey with John and Rebecca of Curious Publishing in the arts area to figure out what the community would want in a physical space. And so my research sort of bridges this gap between not funding art and then seeing what this potential physical space could mean in terms of filling the voids of an infrastructure that doesn't exist currently, but has been sort of like mishmashed together by artists who are still making work and, you know, leading the groundwork of this. And so my sort of like conclusion, I guess, that you can see on the next page is that if the arts area was able to have a physical space, it would create an impact on the community that would be transformative, because they would be allowed to have like a physical area for their programs to take place, and for the, like, as I stated before, the like communal based aspect of art to take place and flourish and be supported, and people would have resources they wouldn't have before, things of that nature. Additionally, in Sophie's presentation, she mentions like the issues with educational access to arts, and because of LCAP funding and how you need to advocate for your district's allocation to the arts, like having a physical place for them to be able to do that type of organizing would be absolutely instrumental to not only like artistic development and communal growth and coming together, but also on like a political level of being able to create this like infrastructure where schools would be able to advocate for themselves better. So my last page is just additional resources related to arts in the Inland Empire. I'm excited to see that this physical space will become something in the future and continue sort of exploring these weird theoretical impacts of art that like you can see come through in other ways and beautiful conversations. So sorry that that was all over the place, but that's where we are. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Daisy. That was wonderful. And also Sophie, that was great. So we have one more, right? One more presenter. And that is Balin, who is an organizational studies major and an almost graduating senior. Balin, you ready? And a Pitzer student.
All right, hello everyone. Unfortunately, my camera is broken. So I'm gonna see if really quick, if I can just log in on my phone, because then you guys could see me at least, and I feel a little bad, sorry. Should have been ready for this. One moment, please. All right, well, unfortunately, I don't have a camera for you guys, but I will just jump right into it. And I also I have some visual aids that I will try to share right now. But I've been finishing up a lot, and I have not finished this one, but I've got this stuff in my head. And so I'll just explain. Let's see, screen share. Google Chrome. All right, everybody can see that, yeah? Okay, we'll just jump right into it. So my name's Balin, and I worked with Huerta del Valle, which is a community garden nonprofit in Ontario and the Inland Empire as a whole. They've got now 7 locations. So it's been around for about 12 years, I believe. And they're reaching a point of expansion and kind of this, they're just at an interesting transitional period when I entered into it. And first off, I just want to thank everybody at Huerta del Valle. Had a great experience. It was really a learning experience. I got to really be a part of a community that I'm not necessarily from and didn't necessarily know a whole lot about before. And it was really a great time, I think. So introducing Huerta, their mission is a garden every mile in Inland Empire. So they've established the first one, the Ontario, that was the flagship location. And then since then, they've now gone on to establish 6 more. And their goal is to basically provide affordable fresh produce, organic and locally grown, to the Inland Empire as a region. And it was actually founded in conjunction with some Pitzer students, which was a pretty cool connection, but sort of irrelevant to this right now. But so the educational center is the focus that I really want to talk about. My research really focused on helping develop a structure and a sort of a model for fundraising that could help establish this educational center. So the educational center this is a rendering here in the bottom right, and it is going to basically support a bunch of projects and initiatives that Huerta does. They do a farmer training program. They do a youth literacy program, and among other things. So basically, the project consists of a rammed earth classroom, which would be sustainably built because the earth would come straight from the ground underneath. And then the amphitheater would be the excavated hole, and that would be kind of, so the rammed earth classroom would house those two programs that I listed before, as well as other programs. And then the amphitheater would be a community gathering space, and the shade structure would provide just needed shade for basically all the farmers and members of the garden. So my methods and analytical framework. So I used a couple of different things. Community-centric fundraising was a really interesting thing that I incorporated into my analysis and my research. And it's a model that basically presents the idea that typical fundraising methods in nonprofits are pretty unjust due to their upholding of a lot of structural inequalities and systemic or systems of oppression, I guess I should say. Basically, in a nutshell, it is trying to move away. Basically, it's a set of 10 values that you use basically to look at your fundraising campaign and analyze it and make sure you're not basically upholding these problematic systems. Appreciative inquiry was how I tried to decenter myself from these conversations I was having at Huerta, because I'm not a community member. I'm a white kid from Pitzer College who's coming into their community and trying to do some community change work, and it's not really my place to do the work. You know, I was trying to be a facilitator of a community discussion that could generate a new method of fundraising that would be both effective for their needs and also upholds or do the opposite of uphold, sorry, combat basically these unjust systems that exist in the way that fundraising works right now in nonprofits. And then the problematic structures that are kind of key is the idea that a lot of these nonprofits have wealthy white boards with a lot of money on hand, and they can then garner through connections a lot of investment and donation, but also through their own ability to put down large sums of money. They can do what's called an anchor gift. And so an anchor gift is usually on a capital campaign when you're trying to generate large sums of money for a nonprofit infrastructural kind of project like this that's not directly related to the mission. The anchor gift is what tells all the other foundations that are going to give you money, we have already got this much money and we can do this project and it will happen. And so basically that's all I have on the presentation. But so to conclude with what my takeaways were, sorry, how do I stop screen sharing? Let's share.
Bottom of the.
In conclusion, I guess I basically, sorry, let me pull up my notes. I am proposing that Huerta del Valle can utilize those framework kind of those by using those aspects to frame these conversations. I was able to generate conversations within our meetings and propose questions through appreciative inquiry about methods that we could develop together to fundraise effectively. And in a nutshell, we're being like this is a continual process. We're still talking about it. I'm still working with them. But basically we're trying to find a way to, and we have already established a few things of how to make this project a reality, given the fact that we don't have a wealthy board, we don't have a lot of outside connections, we don't have a lot of income coming in necessarily for something like this. So one of the things, a couple of ways we can battle these systems of oppression and help Huerta achieve its goals are to bundle small gifts from local businesses and other places where we can find it, basically $10,000 to $20,000 gifts that would all conglomerate together to create the anchor gift or the lead gift. And that would be the thing that would be able to get larger foundations interested in investing in this project. Another one is, so yeah, sorry. A key thing I didn't mention is that I was bringing in outside information from experienced nonprofit consultants, basically, because of connections I have personally. Basically, my mom works in nonprofits and had a colleague that she put me in touch with, and I did an interview and talked to her, and then basically brought some of that information back to Huerta, brought up some questions that she had brought up in my mind about fundraising, and was able to basically develop some strategies that we can use going forward. And so I think this is really important work. And it was really interesting and cool to be able to actually witness my positionality, just having these random connections to the nonprofit world, be able to influence and help create new knowledge production out of the community through asking questions and following up those questions, and then going back to the other side and talking more to the consultants, and then coming back and seeing what those takeaways are that the community actually values. And that's pretty much what I have. I'm sorry about the lack of visual aid for the conclusion there, but I hope I got my point across well. And before I go, I just want to say thank you to everybody in CASA, my classmates, as well as Eric, Barbara, Jessica, Tessa, all the presenters who came in and did the awesome presentations, the authors of the readings. Honestly, it's just been a great experience. So thank you, everybody.
Let's let ourselves all get off mute, because I think that was the last presenter. Is that correct? Yes? Let's all get off mute and cheers for ourselves and each other.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Yeah.
You all did so beautifully. That was amazing work. Yay! Barbara, do you want to say anything, or Eric?
Can you hear me? Or maybe I'm muted. I can't.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm blown away. I got to read, drafts of all of the work, but it's just all come together so amazingly. I think I kept saying we started with nothing and we'll have something, but we started with nothing and we have something amazing and powerful and valuable. And you all did it yourselves, even though it was hard. And it was a real pleasure for me to be part of your journey and part of this journey. I've learned so much. You've taught me so much. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for being engaged and for coming to class and for being present and giving of yourselves and being okay with not being certain about what's happening. That was really inspirational for me. Congratulations to everyone.
I just want to say great work, everyone. I didn't know as much about all your research projects because that wasn't the focus of the class we had together. But so it was really fun. I probably got the most like, oh, that's what you've been doing kind of than anyone else. So that was really fun for me. And really the diversity of the kind of projects you did and how people presented was just fascinating. I really kept taking notes, things I kept learning. Oh yeah, that. So I've been inspired and keep learning myself. So thank you all. Great, my great colleagues. Yeah, it's so fun to just be part of this program.
I just want to echo both Eric and Barbara. I just so impressed by the research you all have done, and it's so beautiful. And thank you to each and every student. Baylin, if you don't mind, stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody's faces like more clearly. I want to see all the beautiful faces. And
Wait, sorry, I thought I had stopped it. Oh, I see. I'm so sorry.
there we go. And then also to our community partners, so much gratitude, and to our past CASA students. And just this is a beautiful community. I feel so blessed to be a part of it with all of you. I want to share with you that we're really hoping we get to open CASA. And I know it's so strange that like we haven't like met each other, some of us in real person in real time. Like we don't even know, like, am I taller than Mateo or is Mateo taller than me? I'm like really curious. Like we don't know, right? So we have to like get together. You're taller. Okay, whatever. But we have to get together and dance and sing and hug and play and like be in person. And you can see the art on the wall from arts area at CASA and all of those things. So we are having, we hope, a homecoming open house reunion as part of the art walk on August 21st that Ontario hosts. And we're really hoping if anyone's in town that you'll come to CASA in downtown Ontario and actually see the space and see each other and be with us to celebrate community and art. And so that's one announcement. Another announcement is like, tell your friends they should do CASA. We always like love having the word of mouth is like the best at Pitzer. Also, there's a brief announcement that if anyone, any final questions, announcements, comments from anyone?
I just wanted
everyone. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
At the book launch also as well at the homecoming and the art walk, will be launching the book that Amanda put together through the Place Collaborative.
Thanks, Jessica. Toya.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I am so proud of each and every one of you. I enjoyed your presentation. I love your perseverance. Man, you guys are amazing. Keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep shining like the diamonds that you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Toya, and thanks for representing starting over and all your love and support for us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I just wanted to also do a shout out to thank you. If you didn't see my comment on the side there, Tessa's talking about the accumulation of multiple semesters, and we saw this coming together last week at the arts area. We have had 4 interns from Pitzer, 2 from CGU, all focusing on research and arts education. And the arts area was just tapped by the state organization for arts education advocacy to be the lead for San Diego County. So we will be leading that project, and one of our former interns is going to be the project and program director for that project. So very exciting. So thank you for all your work.
Yay. I have to say, there has been a bit of a pipeline from CASA to getting a job with some of our organizing partners. So I'm just saying, it's not a bad thing. It's not about the job, but it is about the relationships and that builds that happens. So that's cool.
And we also look forward to the art walk with all of you.
I was just sitting here thinking, I'm like, wow, if our state capital just was replaced with every single one of you, man, it would be an amazing state.
We'd be able to live in that liberated world that Avalon asked you all about.
As indeed.
Any last comments, anyone, before we close? This is the last hour of the semester, y'all. We made it together.
I just want to appreciate this class so much. I'm a senior, so like all my friends have been asking, are you done yet? Like, you're not done yet? Because of this presentation, you know, the paper, and I'm not even mad about it. Like, it's work that I enjoy doing. And I think that speaks volumes. I'm just so lucky to have had this opportunity. And yeah, thank you to all my peers and everyone for making this possible.
It's really sweet.
I would also like to echo those sentiments. You know, I'm a senior. I've worked with Tessa. I've known Tessa for years now. I'm like a super senior, you know, because I'm a non-traditional age student and did college part-time, and it's taken me a long time to finish, but you know, I graduate tomorrow. And you know, I've always been like pestering Tessa like about the Ontario program when it was called Ontario program, and now it's called CASA. And I really like the name, but I'm just like, it was a culmination. It was a perfect class to end off my time at Pitzer College, because it really was the culmination of the Pitzer experience. And like, I wouldn't change the group of people I had it with for the world. Like everyone contributed to my learning, and just I'm thankful for the semester and thankful for you all.
Thankful for you and all our seniors. Congratulations. That's such a beautiful accomplishment.
It's like, no, you turn off the Zoom call. No, you turn off the Zoom call. But I think I've been in contact with you, Tessa, since like freshman year. I wrote about the Ontario program actually in my like admissions essay. I remember it so vividly to Pitzer. I like really wanted to do it, but then it was like things led to things, couldn't really do it this semester. And then it was like, boom. So final semester to do it. I think it's the only glue that could keep me together during online school and things like that. And just like, it's been really like, I don't know, at times I felt aimless, but then it's like this, I've just been grinding this week to get this out, get this presentation and all this stuff. And it just has been great to see how everything's come together and how, I don't know, like even amongst the aimlessness, I wasn't even that stressed about it because of just like the community we had. And like, I just knew that people would be there for me and I would have the help that I needed. And it's really weird to have that, but also even weirder to have that on Zoom. So it's like, I don't know, this class has been just like amazing to me. And also I've already told this to you guys who've been in my class, but I like met Michael my freshman year and just like, it's really cool to be like, to see that transformation. Now we're ending our school experiences together. And it's just like, I'm really excited to see what the future holds for all of us and excited to go to Jessica's studio and be around the Inland Empire in different capacities in the future. And also shout out John, thank you so much for everything this semester.
I just want to like tell you all from the outside because I wasn't teaching this semester, but when I came in like 3 weeks ago and you're all like, oh my God, like how is it all going to come together? Is it going to be anything? Is it going to be good? What are we doing? And I just want you to take a look at yourselves and like you all just did this beautiful work and it came together and not without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I'm sure, but like really beautiful work and collaboration and support. So you should really feel proud of yourselves. It looked gorgeous from this end. I'm like, oh, it's all perfect. Just easy breezy, done, good. So cool. All right, so shall I finally turn it off? Are we going to go to
Actually,
have dinner?
I have
Oh,
one
Barbara.
thing to say.
Yes.
So I don't know if you all remember, dear friends, CASA 105, I said I wasn't going to give you a grade. Do you remember that? That you have to grade yourselves? So in the chat is the link to the form that I want you to fill out. And I don't want you to think about it as grading yourself, but maybe like a final little reflection on all the growth that you've experienced this semester. And so I would really appreciate if you could do that maybe by Monday. And I look forward to reading your final drafts. And thank you all for doing such great jobs peer reviewing each other's work and giving loving, critical, amazing, helpful feedback. It was a pleasure for me to read your comments on each other's papers. And I wanted to just say lastly that I love all of you and I'm really, really, really happy for the time that we had together. Thank you for helping me get through this semester.
Cheers to our professors. Cheers to CASA. Ching ching.
Ching ching. Be well, everyone. Have a beautiful end of your semester celebration. Take good care of yourselves. Peace and love and justice.
Thank you. Much love.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.